I woke up to the smell of burnt coffee and my mother-in-law's perfume. My eyes snapped open. That perfume. Chanel number 5, the version from 2019 that she bulk ordered before they reformulated it. I hadn't smelled it in years. Couldn't have smelled it in years because Margaret Chen switched to Tom Ford in 2021 after my phone. I grabbed it from the nightstand, hands shaking. The lock screen made my heart stop. March 15th, 2019. I sat up so fast the room spun. My apartment. The old apartment in Soma, the one bedroom with the broken heating and the view of the dumpsters. I'd moved out of this place in May 2019, and after they made me sign, this was impossible. I looked down at my hands. 32 years old again, no wedding ring yet. The scar on my left palm from the prototype incident was gone. Wouldn't happen for another 6 months. My hair was longer, darker, unstyled in the messy bun I used to sleep in before I learned better. The coffee smell was getting stronger. Someone was in my kitchen. My body moved on autopilot, muscle memory from a life I'd already lived padding across the cold floor to the kitchen doorway. And there they were. Daniel, my future husband, my future betrayer, and his mother. "Morning, sleepyhead." Daniel smiled at me, that boyish grin that used to make my stomach flip. Now it made me nauseous. "Mom brought breakfast. We need to talk about the Series A terms." Margaret Chen sat at my tiny kitchen table like she owned it, expensive handbag perched on the chair beside her, tablet open to a document I recognized. The document. The one that would destroy my life. "The lawyer sent over the final paperwork," she said, not bothering with good morning. "We need your signature today. The investors are getting impatient." I stood there in my old pajamas, the ones with the coffee stain I'd never quite gotten out, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Not my heart. That had broken already in another life when was 57 years old and dying of cancer in a county hospital because I couldn't afford better. When Daniel visited me once out of what he called obligation, with his second wife waiting in the car. No, this was something else cracking, something harder and colder. I was 24 years back in time, and I remembered everything. "Emily," Daniel's smile flickered. "You okay? You look weird." I looked weird. I probably looked like someone who'd just been handed a second chance by God or the universe or whatever entity governed cosmic do-overs. Someone who'd spent 24 years watching the company I built with my own hands. My code, my vision, my 18-hour days in this very apartment make billions of dollars for everyone except me. "I need coffee first," I heard myself say. Already made it." Daniel gestured to the pot. "The way you like it." He hadn't made it the way I liked it. He'd made it the way he liked it, burned and bitter, because Daniel Chen had never bothered to learn how anyone else took their coffee. But in my first life, I'd drunk it anyway. I'd drunk his terrible coffee and smiled, and been grateful he was there at all. I poured myself a cup now and added cream until it was pale tan, the way I actually preferred. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. "So," I sat down across from her, "the Series A. $10 million valuation, $2 million investment." Margaret's manicured finger traced across the tablet screen. "Parker Ventures is very excited about MemoryLock's potential, but they need a clean cap table. No complicated equity structures." MemoryLock, my baby. The enterprise password management system I'd coded in this apartment over 16 months of sleepless nights and ramen dinners. The software that would, by 2025, be on every Fortune 500 computer in America. In my first life, I'd owned 85% of it on this day. By tomorrow, I'd own nothing. "The thing is," Margaret continued, her tone suggesting she was being patient with a slow child, that startups need streamlined leadership. "Daniel has the business degree, the connections. You're the technical talent, which is valuable, but engineers are replaceable," I finished for her. She blinked. "I wouldn't put it that way." "How would you put it?" "Emily." Daniel sat down next to me, putting his hand over mine. The touch made my skin crawl. I didn't pull away, not yet. "You know, I love what you've built, but Mom's right. I can take this to the next level. You're incredible at coding, but scaling a business? That's a different skill set. In my first life, this conversation had destroyed me. I'd cried. I'd argued that it was my code, my vision, my company, and they'd worn me down over 6 hours until I signed. The equity transfer agreement. 85% of my company to Daniel in exchange for a CTO position and a generous salary of $95,000 a year. 5 years later, in 2024, MemoryLock was acquired by Microsystems Corporation for $2.8 billion. Daniel had walked away with $2.38 billion. I'd gotten a severance package of $200,000 after they restructured my position out of existence 3 months before the acquisition. No equity meant no payout. The lawyers Daniel hired made sure of that. He'd married his college girlfriend 2 months after the acquisition. Margaret had attended an address that cost more than my annual salary. I wasn't invited. But here now, in March 2019, I was still Daniel's girlfriend. Still the technical genius he paraded in front of investors. Still useful, not for long. "Let me see the documents," I said. Margaret's smile was triumphant. She slid the tablet across the table. I read through it slowly. The equity transfer, the new corporate structure. Daniel as CEO with full operational control. Me as CTO, subordinate to him, with a salary and no ownership. Every word was exactly as I remembered. "There's a typo," I said. "What?" "Page 7. Intellectual property. As assignment, you wrote all past, present, and future innovations. That's not enforceable in California. Employee IP law is very specific. This would get thrown out in any court." Margaret's smile froze. "The lawyers used a template from Delaware corporate law. MemoryLock is incorporated in California." I looked up at her. "If you want this to hold up, you need to specify innovations created within the scope of employment. Otherwise, I could argue everything I've coded so far, which is the entire product, belongs to me personally." Silence. Daniel was staring at me. "Since when do you know corporate law?" "Since I spent 15 years fighting it in court, trying to get back what was mine. Since I educated myself in every legal mechanism that could have saved me too late to use them." "I've been reading," I said simply. "Well," Margaret recovered quickly. "Then it's good we're catching this now. I'll have the lawyers revise." "No." The word dropped into the kitchen, like a stone. "No?" Margaret's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose. "I'm not signing." I watched Daniel's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and then there it was, anger. The anger he'd always hidden so well behind the easy smile and the sweet words. The anger that came out in my first life after the wedding, in small cruelties and casual dismissals. "Emily, we've been planning this for months." His voice was tight. "The investors are expecting—" "Then you should have consulted me before making promises." I stood up, still holding the tablet. "This is my company, my code, my vision. If Parker Ventures wants to invest, they can invest in a company I own." "Don't be ridiculous." Margaret stood too. "You're a 26-year-old engineer with no business experience. No investor will trust you to run a company." "Then I guess they won't invest." "Emily." Daniel grabbed my arm. Not hard, not yet. But his fingers pressed into my bicep in a way that would have made me fold in. My first life. "Think about what you're saying. This is our future, our life together." I looked at his hand on my arm, at the face I'd loved once before I learned what it really meant when he smiled. "There is no our life together, Daniel. There's my company, which you want to steal. And there's my future, which doesn't include you." I pulled my arm free. "Get out of my apartment." "You're making a huge mistake," Margaret said. Her voice had gone cold, imperious. "Without us, you'll have nothing. Do you understand? Nothing." "I understand perfectly." I walked to the door and opened it. "Now get out before I call security." They left. Daniel's face was red with rage he was barely containing. Margaret's expression promised retribution. I closed the door behind them and locked it. Then I walked to the bathroom and threw up. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I'd just blown up my life, both lives, in under 10 minutes. But I'd also just saved myself. Splashed water on my face and looked in the mirror. 26 years old, alive, aware, armed with 24 years of knowledge about what came next. Memory lock would still be acquired by Microsystems in 2024. I knew that with absolute certainty because I'd lived it. The technology was that good, the market timing was that perfect, and Microsystems' CEO, Richard fucking Caldwell, had wanted this specific product for that specific year. But the path to that acquisition could be different, would be different. I grabbed my laptop and opened a new document, started typing. Everything I remembered, every detail of the next 5 years, the exact date Parker Ventures would have offered to invest, March 23, 2019. The counteroffer they'd accept, $12 million valuation, same $2 million investment, but I retained 70% ownership. The launch of our enterprise product, September 2019, 6 months ahead of the original schedule I'd been forced to delay because Daniel wanted to perfect the marketing. The critical security flaw that wouldn't be discovered until 2021, costing us 3 major clients. I could fix that now, patch it before it became a problem. The acquisition offer from TechCorp in January 2023, $800 million, which Daniel had rejected because Margaret told him to hold out for more. That had been the right call, actually. Microsystems' offer 18 months later was better. But the key, the absolute key, was the corporate structure. In my first life, Daniel had set up a complicated system of holding companies and trusts. He'd claimed it was for tax optimization. Really, it was to make sure that when my CTO position was eliminated, I had no claim to the acquisition payout. The equity I'd signed away went to Daniel's personal holding company. When Memory Lock was acquired, that holding company got the payout, and I got nothing. This time, I'd structure it differently. I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts. There, Patricia Okonkwo, in my first life, Patricia had been a junior associate at a mid-tier law firm in 2019. By 2043, when I died, she was a named partner at one of the most powerful corporate law firms in Silicon Valley. We'd met when she did pro bono work for a support group I'd joined, founders who'd been forced out of their own companies. She'd cried at my hospital bedside and said she wished she'd known me earlier. When she could have helped, now she could. I texted her, "Patricia, it's Emily Park. We met at the TechCrunch conference last month. I need a lawyer for my startup. Equity protection and corporate structure. Can you meet today?" The TechCrunch conference had been in February. I'd gone alone because Daniel said it was a waste of time. Patricia had been there recruiting for her firm. We'd talked for 10 minutes about IP law, exchanged cards, never followed up. This time, we would. My phone buzzed within minutes. "Emily, yes, I'm free at 2 p.m. Coffee? Your office. This is serious. I'll book a conference room." I got dressed. Not the casual startup uniform of jeans and a hoodie. The black suit I'd bought for my grandmother's funeral and worn exactly once. Professional. Serious. Then I made a list. There were 3 critical things I needed to do in the next 6 months. 1. Maintain complete control of Memory Lock through a legal structure so airtight that no one could force me out or dilute my ownership. 2. Accelerate product development to capture market share before the competitors I knew were coming. 3. Position myself as the irreplaceable face and brain of the company so that when acquisition time came, the buyers would only want to deal with me. Daniel and Margaret thought I was just an engineer, that I couldn't run a business. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Patricia Okonkwo's office was in a converted Victorian in Hayes Valley, the kind of place that tried very hard to look casual and disruptive but cost a fortune in rent. She met me in the lobby looking exactly as I remembered from my first life. Sharp eyes, natural hair pulled back in a bun, a suit that was slightly too big because she'd bought it aspirational and hadn't quite grown into her partner-track confidence yet. "Emily!" She shook my hand with the firm grip of someone who'd been told that mattered. "So good to hear from you. Come on up." The conference room was small, glass-walled, overlooking the street. Patricia set down 2 kombucha bottles. This was San Francisco, after all, and pulled out a legal pad. "So," she said, "tell me about your company." I told her. Not everything, not about the Rebirth or the 24 years of knowledge, but I told her about Memory Lock, about the technology, about the potential market, and I told her about Daniel. He wants you to transfer 85% equity for a salary position? Patricia's pen stopped moving. Emily, that's not an investment structure, that's theft. I know. Does he have any claim to the IP? Did he contribute to the code? No, it's 100% my work. I built it before we even started dating. Then why would you consider this at all? Because he told me I couldn't do it alone. Because his mother had connections and I was scared. Because I was 26 and stupid and in love. I'm not considering it, I said. I said no this morning. That's why I'm here. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Okay, good, smart. What do you need from me? I need a corporate structure that protects me, that ensures no matter what happens, investment, acquisition, going public, I maintain control of my company and benefit from its success. Standard founder protection, we can do that. Dual class stock structure, super voting shares for you. No, I leaned forward to say, I don't want standard, I want unbreakable. I want a structure so tight that if someone tried to force me out, they'd need an act of Congress and divine intervention. Patricia studied me. What? Aren't you telling me? I have reason to believe there will be attempts to remove me from my own company. I need to make sure that's legally impossible. By whom? Daniel? By people with money and connections who think engineers can't run businesses. She was quiet for a moment, then she picked up her pen again. Okay, let's build you a fortress. We spent 4 hours in that conference room. Patricia brought in her senior partner, a woman named Judith Reeves who'd been practicing corporate law since the first dot-com boom. Between the two of them, they designed a corporate structure that would have made Machiavelli proud. The key points. 1. I would own 100% of MemoryLock through a personal holding company, Park Technologies LLC. The holding company would have one owner, me, and ironclad operating agreements that prevented any forced sale or transfer of ownership. 2. If I took on investors, they would buy non-voting preferred shares in MemoryLock itself, not in Parky's Technologies. I would maintain absolute voting control. 3. Any employment agreements would explicitly state that my position as CEO could only be terminated by a unanimous vote of all board members, and I would always control enough board seats to prevent that. 4. All IP would be licensed from Park Technologies to MemoryLock. Even if someone somehow took over MemoryLock, they'd have no right to the actual code without my permission. This is aggressive, Judith said, reviewing the documents we'd drafted. Investors might balk. Let them. You're really prepared to walk away from funding if they won't accept these terms? I thought about dying in that hospital, watching Daniel on TV at some tech conference talking about the company he built. His company. Always his company, even though every line of code was mine. Yes, I said, Moaz. I'm prepared to walk away from anyone who won't respect my ownership of what I created. Patricia was grinning. I like you. Will this hold up in court? If drafted properly, absolutely. California is very protective of founders' rights, especially in cases of IP ownership. The key is documenting everything now, before there's any question of contribution or shared creation. Judith looked at me over her reading glasses. I assume you have documentation? Evidence that you created MemoryLock independently? I had 16 months of commit logs, all time-stamped, all from my personal laptop. I had emails to potential clients from before I'd even met Daniel. I had my initial provisional patent application, filed in my name alone. I have everything, I said. Then you're in an excellent position. Judith closed her laptop. We'll draft the documents and file the holding company paperwork this week. You should have everything in place before you take any investor meetings. There's one more thing, I said. I need you to send a cease and desist letter to Daniel Chen. Patricia raised her eyebrows. On what grounds? He's been telling people he's the CEO of MemoryLock. He's been negotiating with investors as if he has authority to make decisions about my company. That's fraud. Is he representing himself as CEO in writing anywhere? I pulled out my phone and showed them Daniel's LinkedIn profile. CEO, Memory Lock Technologies. Since January 2019. Judith smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Oh, that's sloppy. Yes, we can work with that. The cease and desist went out Friday afternoon. Daniel called me 16 times. I didn't answer. His mother called twice. I didn't answer that either. Instead, I worked. I'd lost 5 years in my first life to bad management decisions, to Daniel's insistence on strategic patience, to marketing campaigns that targeted the wrong customers and product features that diluted our core offering. I wasn't losing those years again. I pulled up my codebase and started fixing the security flaw that wouldn't be discovered until 2021. It was buried deep in ISHA. The encryption protocol, a subtle vulnerability in how we handled session tokens. In my first life, a security researcher had found it and disclosed it publicly, leading to a nightmare week of emergency patches and 3 Fortune 500 companies pulling their contracts. I fixed it in an afternoon. Then I optimized the authentication algorithm, cutting response time by 40%. In my first life, we hadn't done that until 2022. I implemented the enterprise dashboard features that Daniel had deprioritized as not urgent. They were urgent. They were the difference between landing IBM as a client in 2019 versus 2021. I worked through the weekend, barely slept, ordered food when my stomach hurt too much to ignore. This was familiar. This was how I'd built Memory Lock in the first place, fueled by coffee and ambition, and the unshakable belief that I was creating something important. But this time, I wasn't naive. I knew exactly how important it was. I knew its value down to the dollar, 2.8 billion. Monday morning, Parker Ventures called. Emily, hi, this is Josh Saunders from Parker Ventures. We've been trying to reach Daniel, but Daniel doesn't work for Memory Lock, I said pleasantly. I'm the CEO and sole owner. If you want to discuss investment, you'll need to talk to me. Pause. There seems to be some confusion. We've been in discussions with Daniel for months about investing in my company without my knowledge or permission. Yes, I'm aware that's fraud. He had no authority to negotiate on Memory Lock's behalf. But I'm happy to discuss investment terms directly with you, if you're still interested. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear typing in the background. Ms. Park, I'm going to need to call you back. Sure, you have my number. He called back 2 hours later. I've spoken with our legal team. They've advised me that we need to start these discussions from scratch. Daniel represented himself as, I know what he represented himself as. He lied. The question is, are you interested in investing in Memory Lock or not? Because if you are, I have terms. If you're not, I have other meetings to take. I didn't have other meetings, but Josh Saunders didn't know that. Yes, we're interested. Can you come in tomorrow? Thursday, 2 p.m., and I'll be bringing my lawyer. I hung up before he could negotiate. Patricia was delighted. You're terrifying. I'm informed. There's a difference. What's your strategy going in? 12 million valuation, 2 million investment for 16.7% equity. Non-voting preferred shares. I maintain full operational control and board majority. Take it or leave it. They'll try to negotiate you down to 8 or 10 million valuation. Then they'll fail. Because I knew something Josh Saunders didn't know. I knew that in 6 months, our biggest competitor, SecurePass, would have a catastrophic data breach that would destroy their reputation and send every enterprise security officer looking for alternatives. I knew that by end of year, Memory Lock would be the fastest growing security startup in the Valley. Parker Ventures would make 120x return on their investment when Microsystems acquired us in 2024. At 12 million valuation, they'd make slightly less than at 8 million, but they'd still make a fortune. They just didn't know it yet. The meeting on Thursday was exactly as brutal as I expected. Josh Saunders brought 2 associates and a lawyer. I brought Patricia. We met in Parker Ventures' conference room in Menlo Park, all glass and modernist furniture and a view of the 101 freeway. So, Josh said after the pleasantries, let's talk about where we are. You want to invest in Memory Lock. I'm willing to accept investment under specific terms. That's where we are. One of the associates, a guy named Kyle, who looked like he'd gone from Stanford to VC without ever holding a real job, smirked. That's a very confident position for a first-time founder with no revenue. We have $40,000 in MRR as of this morning. I pulled out my laptop and showed them the dashboard. And I closed a deal with Techstars Enterprise yesterday. They're signing 200 seats at $50 per seat per month. That's another $120,000 annually starting June 1st. The smirk vanished. I'd closed Techstars by calling the CTO directly, a guy named Marcus Freeman who, in my first life, had become our client in 2020. But I'd met him at that TechCrunch conference in February. We talked for an hour about enterprise security architecture. I'd impressed him. Yesterday, I'd sent him a demo of the new dashboard features and the optimized authentication. He'd signed a contract this morning. That's impressive growth, Josh admitted. It's just the beginning. I have a pipeline of Fortune 500 prospects who are currently locked into inferior solutions. When their contracts expire, which I've mapped out month by month for the next 18 months, they'll be looking for alternatives. Memory lock will be the obvious choice. I showed them my sales forecast. It was based on perfect knowledge of which companies would have security incidents, which CISOs would be fired, which budgets would open up. They couldn't know that, of course. To them, it just looked like excellent research. Okay, Josh glanced at his associates. This is very promising. We're thinking a $10 million valuation, $12 million, non-negotiable. Ms. Park, you have to understand, at this stage, I understand perfectly. You're looking at early-stage risk and trying to maximize your equity percentage. I'm looking at a company that will dominate the enterprise password management market within 3 years. We have different time horizons. And if you're wrong about the growth trajectory, I'm not. The certainty in my voice made them uncomfortable. Good. Patricia spoke up. We're also requiring non-voting preferred shares with a Wax liquidation preference. Standard anti-dilution protection, but no board seat and no operational control. Kyle leaned forward. That's not how early-stage investment works. We need oversight to protect our investment. You need returns. You'll get them. But you don't get to second-guess my product decisions or my hiring or my strategy. This is my company. I built it. I know exactly where it's going. No founder knows exactly where their company is going, Josh said. I smiled. I do. We argued for 3 hours. They tried every angle: lower valuation, board seat, voting rights, veto power over major decisions. I held firm on every point. Finally, Josh called a recess. His team huddled in the corner, talking in low voices. Patricia leaned over to me. They're going to walk, she whispered. No, they're not. Emily, you're not giving them anything. They're investors. They want returns. Everything else is ego. Josh came back to the table. 12 million valuation, 2 million investment, non-voting preferred, but we want monthly financial reporting and quarterly board observer rights. Monthly reporting, yes. Observer rights, no. You'll get the same quarterly updates all investors get. That's non-standard. So is a first-time founder who closes Fortune 500 clients before her Series A. Take it or leave it, Josh. Those are my terms. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at his laptop at the revenue numbers at the Techstars contract. We'll need to run this by our partners. You have until Monday. After that, I'm taking meetings with other firms. I stood up. Patricia scrambled to follow me. In the elevator, she grabbed my arm. Holy shit! Emily, that was necessary. You're either completely brilliant or completely insane. Both, probably. My phone rang Saturday morning. Josh Saunders. We're in. 12 million valuation, your terms. When can you sign? I smiled at my ceiling, saying, Monday morning, have your lawyer send the documents to Patricia Okonkwo. And Josh, thank you for believing in memory lock. Thank you for not shopping this to Sequoia. I hadn't even thought of Sequoia. But sure, let him think I had leverage I didn't use. I hung up and lay in bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling of my shitty Soma apartment. In my first life, I'd signed away my company on March 16th. Today was March 28th. 12 days later, and instead of losing everything, I'd just secured $2 million in funding while maintaining 83.3% ownership. And Daniel Chen had nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't have saved, but I recognized it anyway. Daniels, we need to talk. What you're doing is insane. You can't run a company alone. You're going to fail and lose everything. Call me. I deleted it. Another text came through immediately. I'm trying to help you. My mom knows people. We can fix this. You're making enemies. Enemies. That was almost funny. In my first life, I'd spent decades without enemies because I'd been too irrelevant to bother hating. Just the woman who'd coded something valuable and been stupid enough to give it away. This time, I'd rather have enemies than be invisible. I blocked his number. Then I got up and got to work. The next 6 months were a blur of code and customer calls and careful strategy. I hired slowly, deliberately. 3 engineers I remembered from my first life, good people who'd been underpaid at dying startups. I offered them equity and meaningful work and the chance to build something that mattered. I hired a head of sales, Jennifer Martinez, who in my first life had been a mid-level account executive at Salesforce. I'd met her at a conference in 2022 after she'd spent 3 years breaking records. But in 2019, she was restless and ambitious and looking for a startup to join. I offered her 2% equity and a commission structure that would make her rich if we succeeded. She signed on immediately. Why me? She'd asked. You could hire someone with more enterprise experience. Because you're going to be the best enterprise sales executive in the Valley in 5 years. I'm just hiring you before everyone else figures it out. She'd laughed, but she'd also blushed. That's quite a prediction. I'm good at predictions. By September, we had 15 employees and $400,000 in MRR. By December, we'd crossed $1 million in ARR, and I was turning down acquisition offers. Small offers, relatively. TechCorp wanted to buy us for $30 million. Oracle offered $45 million. In my first life, Daniel had been tempted by these offers. He'd wanted the quick exit, the immediate payout. It had taken Margaret's greed to convince him to hold out for more. This time, I didn't need convincing. I knew exactly how much MemoryLock was worth, and it was a lot more than $45 million. Not interested, I told the Oracle corporate development team. Ms. Park, this is a very generous offer for a company your size. In 3 years, you'll regret not offering more. I hung up. Jennifer caught me after the call. Emily, we just turned down $45 million. Yes. That's life-changing money. It's also about 30 times less than what this company will be worth. She stared at me. You're that confident? I am. Okay. She took a breath. Okay, I'm trusting you. Good. Because we have a meeting with IBM next week and I need you to close them. She closed them. $500,000 annual contract expandable to $2 million as they rolled MemoryLock out across their divisions. We celebrated in the office with champagne that cost $12 a bottle because we were still a startup and I was still careful with money. But in my head, I was calculating. IBM would expand to the full $2 million by 2021. And they'd be one of our strongest advocates when Microsystems started asking questions about acquisition targets in 2023. Everything was going according to plan. Better than plan, actually. Because in my first life, we'd been smaller at this stage. Daniel's caution and Margaret's interference had slowed us down. This time, without them, we were growing faster, which meant the acquisition offer, when it came, would be bigger. I didn't hear from Daniel again until April 2020. We were in the middle of the pandemic lockdown. My team was fully remote. I'd made that call in February before most companies took COVID seriously. Another advantage of living through 2020 before, I knew exactly when to pull the trigger on work from home. My phone rang at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Emily. His voice was strained. It's Daniel. I know. Can we talk in person? No. Emily, please, I fucked up. I know I fucked up, but things are bad. Mom's sick and I've been trying to get a company off the ground and you want money. Silence. That's what this is, isn't it? You need money. I need a job. His voice cracked. Emily, I've been trying for a year. No one will hire me. When they Google my name, they see the cease and desist, and they see you and they ask what happened, and you have to explain that you tried to steal your girlfriend's company? That's not what happened. That's exactly what happened. You tried to convince me to sign over my equity. When I refused, you impersonated a CEO to negotiate investment deals without authority. That's fraud, Daniel. The only reason I didn't press charges is because Patricia talked me out of it. I was trying to help. You were trying to help yourself. You and Margaret wanted the glory and the money, and you thought I was too stupid or too weak to stop you. He was crying now. I could hear it in his breathing. In my first life, these tears would have destroyed me, would have made me question everything, made me wonder if I'd been too harsh. This time, I felt nothing. I can't help you, I said. Emily, please. Goodbye, Daniel. Hung up and blocked the number. Then I went back to work. The pandemic was chaos for most companies, but for Memory Lock, it was opportunity. With everyone working remotely, enterprise security became critical overnight. CISOs who'd been dragging their feet on password management solutions suddenly had urgent budget. We grew from 4 million ARR to 15 million ARR in 8 months. By January 2021, we were the fastest growing security startup in the Valley. By June, we'd crossed 25 million ARR, and I was hiring my 50th employee. Jennifer became VP of Sales. The 3 engineers I'd hired early became directors of their teams. I promoted from within whenever possible, building loyalty and culture. And I waited, because I knew what was coming in 2023. The TechCorp acquisition offer came right on schedule. January 2023, $800 million. I was in my new office. We'd moved to a proper headquarters in Palo Alto, nothing too flashy but professional, when my assistant told me there was a call from TechCorp's CEO. Put it through. Ms. Park, I'm Jason Chen, CEO of TechCorp. I'd like to discuss a potential acquisition. Not interested. I haven't told you the offer yet. It doesn't matter. Memory Lock isn't for sale. Ms. Park, we're prepared to offer. I said no, Mr. Chen. But thank you for your interest. I hung up. My CFO, a brilliant woman named Sarah Kim, who I'd hired in 2021, knocked on my door. Did you just turn down TechCorp without hearing their offer? Yes. Emily, that was probably $500 million minimum. Probably closer to $800 million. She sat down. And you said no. I said no. Are you going to tell me why? Because in 18 months, we'll get a better offer. From who? Microsystems. Sarah blinked. The Microsystems? Richard Caldwell's company? That's the one. Emily, how could you possibly know that? I smiled. Because I know Richard Caldwell is building an enterprise security suite, and he needs a password management solution. He's been developing one internally, but it's not as good as ours. By mid-2024, he'll realize he can't compete, and he'll want to acquire us instead. That's a very specific prediction. I'm good at predictions. And if you're wrong, I'm not. I wasn't. Because in my first life, this had happened exactly this way. The only difference was that Daniel had owned the company then. Daniel had taken the TechCorp offer after 6 months of negotiation in July 2023, and Microsystems had acquired them for $2.8 billion in January 2024. But Daniel had sold too early. He'd gotten a good price, sure, but if he'd waited 6 more months, he could have gotten more than triple. I was going to wait. Sarah was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. You know something. I know a lot of things. Emily, I'm your CFO. I need to understand the strategy here. If you're making decisions based on insider information, I'm not. I don't know anything about Microsystems plans that isn't public, I just know our industry and I know what Caldwell needs and I know we're the best solution. That was technically true. Everything I knew about Microsystem's internal development was from my first life, from interviews and articles published after the acquisition. Nothing that wasn't public eventually. Okay, Sarah said slowly. I trust you. But Emily, you're betting the entire company on this. If Microsystems doesn't make an offer, yes, they will. But if they don't, or if they offer less than TechCorp, they won't. She threw up her hands. You're impossible. I'm right. I was right. The first contact from Microsystems came in June 2024. Not an acquisition offer, not yet. Just a meeting request from their corporate development team. They want to discuss partnership opportunities, my assistant said. Tell them I'm available next week. The meeting was at Microsystems headquarters in Seattle. They sent a private jet, which was both impressive and telling. You didn't send a private jet for a minor partnership discussion. Richard Caldwell himself was in the meeting. That was unexpected. CEOs didn't usually attend early-stage acquisition talks. But there he was, 63 years old, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, looking exactly like his photos. Ms. Park, he shook my hand. Thank you for coming. Mr. Caldwell, I'm intrigued. We sat down in a conference room with a view of the Seattle skyline. His corporate development team, 3 vice presidents and a fleet of lawyers took their seats. Let's not waste time, Caldwell said. We've been watching Memory Lock for 18 months. You've built something impressive. Thank you. We've also been building our own password management solution. It's adequate, but it's not as good as yours. I waited. We'd like to acquire Memory Lock. I'm listening. One of the VPs pulled up a presentation. Market analysis, competitor. Landscape. Microsystems enterprise security strategy. It was thorough and professional and entirely unnecessary because I already knew everything they were going to say. We're prepared to offer $1.2 billion, Caldwell said. The room went quiet. $1.2 billion. Less than Daniel had gotten in my first life, but still a staggering amount for a company that had been worth nothing 5 years ago. No, I said. Caldwell raised an eyebrow. No? Memory Lock is worth more than that. Ms. Park, with all respect, $1.2 billion is an excellent In my first year, I had $400,000 in MRR. This year, I have $60 million in ARR, and I'm projecting $85 million by end of year. I have contracts with 200 of the Fortune 500. My customer retention rate is 98%, and my net dollar retention is 125% because my clients keep expanding their contracts. I'm growing 180% year over year in a market that's about to explode because of increasing regulatory requirements around data security. I told these how's my laptop and showed them my projections. In 3 years, Memory Lock will be doing $400 million in ARR. You're not buying a $60 million company. You're buying a $400 million company at a discount. The VPs exchanged glances. That's an aggressive projection, one of them said. It's conservative, actually. I can show you the pipeline. I did, customer by customer, contract by contract. Some of them hadn't signed yet, wouldn't sign for months, but I knew they would. I'd seen it happen before. Caldwell was leaning forward, studying the numbers. $2 billion, he said suddenly. The VPs looked startled. Sir, she's right. Look at the retention numbers. Look at the expansion rate. This isn't a product sale. This is a platform play. If we integrate Memory Lock into our enterprise suite, we lock in customers for the entire security stack. He looked at me. But I need you to stay. 3-year retention agreement. You run the password management division. In my first life, I'd been forced out before the acquisition. No job, no equity, no payout. This time, I was being offered $2 billion and a division president role. What's the equity split? I asked. How much of the company do you own? 83.3%. One of the VPs choked on his coffee. You maintained that much ownership through multiple funding rounds? Caldwell looked impressed. I built this company. I wasn't going to let anyone take it from me. He smiled. It was the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. I like you, Ms. Park. 83.3% of $2 billion is $1.6666 billion. You'll receive half in cash at close, half in microsystem stock vested over 3 years, contingent on your retention agreement. I did the math in my head. $833 million in cash immediately. Another $833 million in stock over 3 years. And my investors, Parker Ventures and the 2 other firms who'd come in during Series B, would split $334 million. A fantastic return. Josh Saunders would be thrilled. I want to keep my team, I said. Everyone who wants to stay at Microsystems gets an offer, and I want final say on product direction for the password management division. Done and done. Then we have a deal. We shook hands. I walked out of that meeting in a daze, not because I was surprised, I'd known this was coming, but because it was real. I'd done it. I'd taken the Rebirth, the second chance, and I'd turned it into $1.66 billion. In my first life, I died with $8,000 in my bank account. The acquisition closed in October 2024. The press release went out on a Tuesday morning. Microsystems acquires MemoryLock for $2 billion. Founder Emily Park to lead password management division. My phone exploded. Texts from friends I hadn't talked to in years. LinkedIn connection requests from people I'd never met. Interview requests from TechCrunch, Forbes, Bloomberg, and one email that made me stop scrolling. From Daniel Chen, subject, "Congratulations, Emily. I saw the news. Congratulations on the acquisition. You were right, and I was wrong about everything. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for all of it." Daniel, I stared at the email for a long time. Then I deleted it. The money hit my account 3 days later, $833 million minus taxes. I sat in my apartment. I'd never moved out of Soma, had never bought a fancy house or a luxury car because I was too busy building the company, and stared at my bank balance. 9 figures. I thought about calling someone, celebrating. But who would I call? I'd spent 5 years working 80-hour weeks. My friends from before had drifted away. My family was estranged because I'd skipped too many dinners, too many holidays. I'd won. I'd achieved exactly what I'd set out to achieve. And I was completely alone. My phone rang. Patricia. "Emily!" She was screaming, "Oh my God, I just saw $2 billion. Yeah. Yeah, that's all you have to say? We built an empire. You're a billionaire. Not quite. Taxes. And the stock portion isn't vested yet. Emily Park, I swear to God, if you start talking about tax optimization right now, I will fly to San Francisco and shake you. Tonight we're celebrating. I'm taking you to the nicest restaurant in the city, and we're ordering the most expensive wine, and you're going to smile and enjoy being stupidly, impossibly rich." I smiled despite myself. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's celebrate. We went to Atelier Cren, 3 Michelin stars, $500 per person before wine. Patricia ordered a bottle of Bordeaux that cost more than my first car. "To Emily Park," she said, raising her glass, "who rebuilt her entire life and became a billionaire out of pure spite." It wasn't spite. It was absolutely spite. You saw the people who wronged you and decided to win so hard they'd choke on it. I clinked my glass against hers. Okay, maybe some spite. Daniel Chen tried to steal your company, and you turned around and sold it for $2 billion. That's not just success, that's revenge. Revenge. I'd never thought of it that way exactly, but Patricia wasn't wrong. "Do you think he knows?" I asked. "How much he lost?" "Oh, honey, everyone knows. It's the top story on TechCrunch. First-time founder sells company for $2 billion, maintains majority ownership through exit. Every VC in the Valley is trying to figure out how you pulled that off. Good cap table management and airtight legal structures. And Patricia Okonkwo's brilliant lawyering." I laughed. "Yes, and that." We drank the expensive wine and ate the elaborate tasting menu and talked about everything except business. Patricia's upcoming partnership vote, her daughter's college applications, my plans for the money. I don't know, I admitted. I haven't thought past this moment. You're 31 years old and you never have to work again. The world is yours. 31. In my first life, I'd been 31 in 2024 too. But I'd been broke, bitter, watching Daniel's success from the outside. This time, I was the success. What happened to Daniel? I asked suddenly. Did you ever hear? Patricia's expression shifted by, do you really want to know? Yes. He tried to raise funding for another startup in 2020. No one would touch him after the cease and desist. He ended up taking a product manager job at a mid-sized tech company. I think he's still there. A product manager job. Making maybe $150,000 a year, if he was lucky. He could have had $2.38 billion. If I'd been stupid enough to sign that document in March 2019, if I'd let him steal my company, he would have walked away with a fortune. Instead, he had a product manager job and I had $833 million in the bank and another $833 million coming. I don't feel bad for him, I said. You shouldn't. He tried to rob you. You just made sure he failed. The waiter brought our next course, some kind of deconstructed vegetable thing that probably had a French name I couldn't pronounce. It was delicious. What about his mother? I asked. Patricia made a face. Margaret Chen, she got early onset Alzheimer's in 2021. Daniel's been taking care of her. I should have felt something about that. Sympathy, maybe. But I remembered Margaret in my kitchen telling me that engineers were replaceable, telling me I'd have nothing without them. I hope she got the care she needed, I said, because it was the polite thing to say. Very diplomatic. I'm not a monster, Patricia. I just wasn't going to let them destroy my life. They tried to destroy your life. You destroyed theirs instead. That's not monstrous. That's just fair. Was it fair? I'd had an advantage they couldn't have imagined. Rebirth. 24 years of knowledge. I'd known exactly what was coming and how to position myself. But then again, they'd tried to cheat me when they thought I was weak and naive. The only difference was that I'd been stronger than they realized. To fairness, I said, raising my glass. To revenge, Patricia corrected. To winning, I compromised. We both drank. The 3-year retention agreement at Microsystems was exactly what I expected. Long days, intense meetings, corporate politics. But I was good at it. Better than I'd been in my first life because I'd already learned these lessons. I knew which battles to fight and which to let go. I knew which executives were threats and which were allies. I knew how to navigate Richard Caldwell's management style, how to present data so he'd agree with my proposals. The password management division thrived under my leadership. We integrated memory lock technology into the broader Microsystems security suite. We launched new features I'd been planning since 2019. We hit $200 million in ARR by 2026. And my Microsystems stock vested right on schedule. $277.7 million per year for 3 years. By the time my retention agreement ended in October 2027, I was worth $1.9 billion after taxes. I was 34 years old. I resigned from Microsystems on a Friday afternoon. Richard Caldwell tried to convince me to stay. You're the best division president I have, he said. I'll double your salary, give you more stock, whatever you want. I appreciate that, but I've done what I came here to do. It's time for something new. What are you going to do? Start another company? I thought about that. I could start another company. I had the knowledge, the money, the connections. I could do it all again, build something else from scratch. But did I want to? I'd spent 8 years, 2 lifetimes in a sense, building Memory Lock. I'd sacrificed relationships, health, peace of mind. I'd won, yes, but I'd also paid a price. I don't know, I told Caldwell honestly. Maybe I'll just rest. He laughed. Emily Park resting. I'll believe it when I see it. But I did rest. For the first time in my adult life, I took time off. Real time off. Not just a weekend here and there. Between product launches. I bought a house. Nothing too flashy, a craftsman in Berkeley with a view of the bay and a garden I could actually maintain. I hired a part-time gardener to teach me how plants worked. I reconnected with my family. My parents, who'd been baffled by my obsession with work, who'd watched me skip holidays and birthdays for years. They'd read about the acquisition in the news, had sent a congratulations card I'd never responded to. I called them. "Emily?" My mother sounded surprised. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I wanted to say I'm sorry for being absent." There was a pause, then, "You were building something important." "I was, but I should have made time for you anyway." We talked for 2 hours, about nothing important. Their garden, my new house, my sister's kids, normal family things. It felt strange. Good strange. I started therapy. A woman named Dr. Reeves who specialized in high-achieving professionals with complicated relationships to success. "Tell me about the rebirth," she said in our third session. I'd told her everything, the whole story. I figured if anyone had heard stranger things, it was a therapist in Berkeley. "What do you want to know?" "How it felt. Waking up in 2019 with 24 years of memories. Disorienting, terrifying, like being given a test I'd already failed once and being told I had one more chance to pass." "And did you pass?" "I made $2 billion. I'd say I passed." "Is that what passing meant to you, the money?" I thought about that. No, passing meant not losing, not being helpless while people stole what I'd built. The money was just proof, evidence that I'd won. Won what? The fight against Daniel, against Margaret, against everyone who thought I was too weak or too stupid to protect myself. Do you still feel like you're fighting? Did I? The fight was over. I'd won. Daniel was a product manager somewhere, and I was a billionaire. Margaret had Alzheimer's and didn't even remember trying to steal my company. "No," I said slowly, I don't." "Then what do you feel?" What did I feel? I felt tired, accomplished, relieved, and lonely. "I feel like I survived something," I said. "But I'm not sure what comes after survival." Dr. Reeves nodded. "That's what we'll figure out." I started investing in other companies, early-stage startups, mostly women founders who reminded me of my younger self. Brilliant engineers with innovative ideas and no business experience. I didn't try to control them, didn't demand majority ownership or operational authority. I just gave them money and advice and connections. "Why are you doing this?" one founder asked me. Her name was Priya, and she'd built an AI-powered medical diagnostics tool. "You could be starting your own company, making more billions." "I've made enough billions," I said. "Now I'm interested in making sure other people don't get screwed the way I almost did." Almost? Long story. I invested in 12 companies in 2 years. 10 of them succeeded. 2 failed, but the founders learned from the experience and went on to build other successful startups. I became known as a founder-friendly investor, someone who understood the technical side but didn't micromanage, someone who'd actually built something themselves. Forbes did a profile on me. Emily Park, the billionaire who's redefining angel investing. I didn't love the attention, but I understood it was part of the role. And then, in June 2029, I got an email that changed everything. From Jennifer Martinez. Subject: coffee. "Hey, Emily, I know you're busy doing the billionaire thing, but I'm in Berkeley this weekend visiting family. Want to grab coffee? I have something I want to run by you. Jennifer Martinez, my first VP of sales at MemoryLock." She'd stayed at Microsystems after the acquisition, had done incredibly well. Last I'd heard, she was running enterprise sales for the entire, security division. I met her at a cafe on 4th Street. She looked the same, sharp, energetic, wearing a suit on a Saturday because she'd probably come from a client meeting. "Emily," she hugged me. "You look good. Retirement suits you." "I'm not retired. I'm just selectively employed." She laughed. "Right, I've seen your investment portfolio. You're as busy as ever." We ordered coffee. She took hers black, I still added cream, and sat in the corner. So, I said, what did you want to run by me? I'm leaving microsystems. That was unexpected. Why? You're crushing it there. I am, but I want to build something of my own. I've been thinking about it for a year and I finally have an idea I'm excited about. Tell me. She pulled out her laptop and showed me a presentation. Enterprise sales automation, AI powered, designed to eliminate the busy work that consumed 60% of most sales reps' time. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of thing that would explode in the next 5 years as AI tools matured. I want you to be my first investor, Jennifer said. Not just because you have money, because you understand what it's like to build something from scratch, and because I trust you not to screw me over. I smiled. Smart. So, will you invest? I looked at the presentation, at the market analysis, the technical architecture, the go-to-market strategy. It was solid, more than solid. Yes, but I have conditions. Okay. You maintain at least 60% ownership through your Series A. You control the board. You make all final decisions on product and strategy. And you use Patricia Okonkwo as your corporate attorney. Jennifer blinked. Those are very founder-friendly conditions. They're the conditions I wish someone had offered me. If you want my money, those are the terms. Emily, that's basically you giving me money and asking for nothing in return. I'm asking for equity. I think you're going to build something incredible and I want to be part of it, but I'm not interested in controlling you. I'm interested in supporting you. She was quiet for a moment. Then she reached across the table and shook my hand. Deal. Jennifer's company, Sales IQ, raised a seed round in September 2029. I put in $2 million for 8% equity. Patricia drafted the documents, making sure Jennifer's ownership was protected. You're building a pattern, Patricia observed, investing in founders who remind you of yourself. Is that bad? No, it's just interesting. You're creating the ecosystem you wish had existed for you. She wasn't wrong. I invested in 6 more companies that year. All women, all technical founders, all building products they'd coded themselves. And I started speaking at conferences, not about memory lock or the acquisition, about founder equity, about protecting yourself legally, about the importance of maintaining control. Investors will tell you that you need adult supervision, I said, at TechCrunch Disrupt in 2030. That engineers can't run businesses, that you should be grateful for their money and their wisdom. And sometimes they're right. Sometimes you do need help, but you should never, ever give away control of what you've built in exchange for that help, because no one will care about your company the way you do. The talk went viral. I got invited to speak at Stanford, at MIT, at every major tech conference in the country. And I got emails, hundreds of them, from founders who'd been pressured to sign away their equity, from engineers who'd been forced out of companies they'd created. I couldn't help all of them. Some had already signed bad documents and there was no legal recourse. But I helped where I could, connected them with lawyers, gave them advice, sometimes just listened. One email stood out, from Daniel Chen. Subject, I saw your talk, Emily. I watched your TechCrunch talk. You were talking about me, weren't you? About what I tried to do. I've been thinking about that day in your apartment for 11 years. The day you kicked me out. I was so angry. I thought you were making a huge mistake. I thought you'd fail without me. Obviously, I was wrong about that. But I want you to know, I've changed. I'm not the person I was in 2019. I'm in therapy. I'm working on myself. I'm trying to be better. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. For real this time. Daniel, I stared at the email for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, delete it, block his email, never think about Daniel Chen again. But another part of me, the part that had spent 8 years in therapy, that had learned to let go of anger, knew that wasn't healthy. I wrote back, Daniel, thank you for the apology. I appreciate it, even if it's 11 years late. I don't know if I forgive you. Forgiveness isn't really the point. You tried to take something from me and I stopped you. That's the end of the story. but I'm glad you're working on yourself. Everyone deserves the chance to be better. I hope you find peace. Emily. I hit send before I could overthink it. His response came an hour later. That's more than I deserve. Thank you, and that was it. The end of the Daniel Chen chapter of my life. I found out later, through mutual connections, the way you find out about exes, that he'd quit his product manager job and gone back to school. Business school. He was teaching entrepreneurship at a community college, helping first-time founders avoid the mistakes he'd made. It was oddly fitting. In 2032, Jennifer's company Sales IQ was acquired by Oracle for $900 million. She'd maintained 65% ownership through the exit. She called me from the signing ceremony crying with joy. Emily, I did it. I actually did it. You did. I'm so proud of you. I wouldn't have done it without you, without your investment, without your advice. You would have done it anyway, maybe with different investors, but you would have done it. You're brilliant and driven, and you were always going to succeed. Still, thank you. My 8% was worth $72 million. A nice return, but more than that, it was proof of concept. Proof that founder-friendly investing worked, that you could make money without exploiting the people building the companies. I expanded my investing, started a fund, Park Ventures, specifically for women technical founders. $100 million initial fund size, all my own money. The pitch was simple. We invest in brilliant engineers building innovative products. We provide capital, advice, and connections. We don't take control. We funded 37 companies in the first 3 years. 28 succeeded, 9 failed. The successes more than made up for the failures. And I mentored, spent hours on calls with founders who were struggling with difficult decisions, who were being pressured by other investors, who just needed someone who'd been there to tell them it would be okay. I became the investor I'd needed in 2019. It felt right. In March 2035, I turned 42. I'd been alive for 66 years across 2 lifetimes. I'd built a billion-dollar company, survived cancer in one life and avoided it in another, outlived my betrayer's ambitions. I was wealthy beyond measure, successful by any metric, surrounded by people I'd helped succeed, and for the first time since waking up in 2019, I felt genuinely happy. Not the manic happiness of winning, not the vindictive satisfaction of revenge, just contentment, peace. I threw a small dinner party at my house in Berkeley. Patricia, Jennifer, Sarah, Kim, a few of the founders I'd invested in, my parents, my sister, and her kids. A toast, Patricia said, raising her glass, to Emily Park, the woman who rewrote her own story and helped rewrite everyone else's. To Emily, everyone chorused. I looked around the table at these people who'd become my family, who'd succeeded partly because I'd helped them, but mostly because they'd done the work themselves. This was what came after survival. This was what came after winning. This was life. Thank you, I said, all of you for being here, for being part of this. Where else would we be? Jennifer grinned. You're the reason half of us are millionaires. You're the reason you're millionaires. I just didn't get in your way. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat in my garden and thought about the other timeline. The one where I'd signed the document, where I'd lost everything, that Emily had died alone and broke and forgotten. This Emily was alive and rich and remembered. The rebirth had been a gift, a cosmic do-over I hadn't earned but had used ruthlessly. I'd changed everything. My life, yes, but also the lives of the dozens of founders I'd invested in, the lives of their employees, the lives of the customers who benefited from their products. One signature, or one refusal to sign, had rippled out into the world and changed it. I looked up at the stars, the same stars that had been there in 2043 when I died the first time, and I wondered if somewhere in the multiverse, first timeline Emily was looking up too. I hoped she was proud. I hoped she knew that she got her revenge. And I hoped she knew that revenge in the end wasn't the point. The point was living well, building things that mattered, helping others succeed. The point was that Daniel Chen tried to take my company, and I said no. And that no, that one word spoken in my shitty Soma apartment 16 years ago, had changed everything. I went inside and opened my laptop, I had 3 pitch decks to review from founders who'd applied to Park Ventures, young women who'd coded brilliant solutions to hard problems and needed someone to believe in them. I'd believe in them. I'd invest in them. I'd make sure they didn't have to fight the battles I'd fought. That was my legacy, not the $2 billion or the successful exits or the Forbes profiles. My legacy was every founder who kept their equity because I'd shown them how. Every woman who said no to a bad deal because she'd heard me speak. Every engineer who built something incredible and actually got to keep it. That was worth more than any acquisition. I opened the first pitch deck and started reading. After all, I had work to do, and this time I was doing it right.